I was still shaking snow off my coat when my dad looked up from his drink and muttered, "Didn't know the parasite was invited." A few relatives laughed. I didn't react. During dinner, I dropped my own bomb and watched their jaws hit the floor. Sup, Reddit. Ever get called a parasite at a family dinner and decide that's the perfect moment to hit them with a reality check? Grab some popcorn. This is gonna be fun. Name's Damon, 33 male. I was still brushing snow off my shoulders when my dad looked up from his coffee and said it loud enough for half the room to hear, "Look who finally showed up, our resident parasite." The word just sat there. Some smiled. Some looked away. A few cousins actually laughed, like he just delivered the punchline to a joke they'd been waiting for all night. My Uncle Roger chuckled. I didn't flinch. Just hung my coat on the rack and walked to the furthest seat from the main table, the one by the drafty window. Figured I'd stay maybe 90 minutes, eat some food, then ghost before midnight. This happened last winter on New Year's Eve, when my sister Cassie decided to host the family dinner at her place in Scottsdale Nice House. Spanish tile, vaulted ceilings, one of those kitchens that looks like it belongs in a magazine. Her husband Paul paid for most of it with his corporate job, but nobody talked about that part. My family isn't the type that does feelings or apologies. Growing up, I had to figure out what people were thinking before they said it out loud. My parents weren't abusive in the textbook way. No black eyes or missing meals. They just knew how to make you feel worthless without ever raising their voices. I dropped out of Arizona State when I was 21. That's the headline they've been dining out on for over a decade. Doesn't matter that I left, because the software I'd built got picked up by a regional bank, and suddenly I was managing real contracts. Doesn't matter that 3 years later, I sold my stake for enough money to never work again if I didn't want to. To them, I quit. Couldn't handle real life. I'm the cautionary tale they trot out whenever someone's kid is struggling. At least he's not like Damon. I rarely showed up to family events anymore. Last time was 2 Thanksgivings ago, when my mom asked if I was still doing that computer thing. This was 6 months after I'd closed an 8-figure government contract. I remember staring at her across the table, wondering if she was genuinely clueless or just committed to the bit. I stayed quiet, but this time felt different. Cassie called me personally 3 days before New Year's. Said she missed me. Said the family wasn't complete without me. Then she dropped the line that made me hesitate. She said Mom and Dad had been asking about me, that they wanted to reconnect. Against every functioning brain cell I had, I said maybe. Then the days rolled by and I thought, what's the worst that could happen? Show up, eat some food, leave before the ball drops. I pulled up to their place at 8:30, late enough to miss the appetizers. The house had all the lights on, and for maybe 5 seconds, I let myself believe this time would be different. Then Dad saw me first. Our resident parasite. The dining room was packed, long table covered in gold and silver decorations. Fancy glasses already half empty. Every seat was full except mine in the corner. I walked past relatives I barely recognized. My mom's sister Susan shot me a sympathetic look. My older cousin Kevin was talking loudly about his promotion. Mom barely acknowledged me, just said, "Oh, good, you made it," then turned back to her conversation. I sat down and watched. Kevin was holding court about his corner office. Everyone nodded, raised their glasses, acted impressed. I picked at the breadbasket. Then halfway through the main course, someone clinked a glass. My Uncle Roger stood up, already tipsy, and announced it was time for the annual success check-in. My stomach dropped. I'd forgotten about this tradition. It was this thing they'd started years back. Everyone goes around and shares their wins from the past year. Promotions, achievements, big purchases, supposed to be motivating. Really, it was just a chance for people to flex and for others to feel inadequate. The table went around one by one. Kevin talked about his raise. My Aunt Brenda mentioned her son getting into law school. Cassie shared that Paul had been headhunted for a VP position. Everyone clapped and congratulated. Then it got to me. Cassie tried to skip over me, but Roger laughed and said, "What about Damon? Still figuring it out?" I looked up. "Still figuring it out," I repeated flatly. A few people chuckled. That's when Paul leaned over. "Hey man, where do you work these days?" I paused. Part of me wanted to give some vague answer, but I was tired of shrinking. I told him the company name, Sentinel Risk Analytics. He blinked. Then his face changed. "Wait, what?" he said slowly. "You work at Sentinel." "I run it," I said. "Pardon me?" He sounded confused. "Yup, founded it 7 years ago." The table went quiet. Dead quiet. Forks frozen midair quiet. And that's when I realized nobody here knew. None of them had ever bothered to ask what I actually did. They'd just decided I was a failure. Paul stared at me like I'd just grown a second head. Holy crap. I took a slow sip of water. Let them marinate in it. Who? My dad said, his tone sharp, defensive. Paul looked around the table like he was waiting for someone else to explain. When nobody did, he turned back to me. Sentinel Risk Analytics is one of the biggest names in fintech fraud detection. They work with half the major banks in the country. I use their software every day at work. I took a sip of water and waited. My mom laughed. That fake tinkling laugh she used when she was uncomfortable. Damon doesn't run anything. He does some kind of computer work freelance stuff. Paul shook his head. No, I'm serious. I've been in meetings where people talk about Sentinel like it's the gold standard. They caught that massive fraud ring in Dallas last year, saved the bank something like $400 million in losses. He pulled out his phone, typing fast. Then he turned the screen toward Cassie. That's him, that's your brother. Cassie looked at the phone, then at me, then back at the phone. Her face went pale. Damon, is this real? I nodded. Yeah, that's real. The vibe in the room completely changed. It was like watching dominoes fall. Confusion first, then disbelief, then something uglier. Resentment maybe, or embarrassment. My dad set his fork down hard. You're telling me you run some tech company and you never thought to mention it. You never asked, I said, voice calm. That's not the same, Mom jumped in. You let us think you were struggling. You let us worry about you. Worry about me. Right. When exactly were you worried? I asked. When you called me a parasite 5 minutes after I walked in. Or when you asked if I was still doing that computer thing. Or maybe it was when you said I was wasting my potential and should have stayed in school. Damon, Cassie started. Her voice was soft, warning me to back off. But I was done backing off. I didn't tell you because there was no point, I continued. You'd already decided who I was. So yeah, I stopped trying. Kevin, because he physically can't stand not being the center of attention, cleared his throat. I mean, come on. Running a company and founding a company are two different things. Lots of people have fancy titles. Paul cut him off. No. I've literally seen Damon present at a conference 2 years ago, keynote speaker. He was talking about machine learning applications in fraud detection. I didn't make the connection until just now, because I didn't know Cassie's brother worked in fintech. He looked at me. Dude, I'm sorry. I had no idea you were dealing with this. My dad's face was red now. You think you're so much better than everyone here? That's what this is. Some kind of power play. Nope, I said. I think I'm tired of being treated like I don't exist unless you need someone to punch down on. Nobody said anything. Uncle Roger was staring at his plate. My cousin Nicole looked like she wanted to be anywhere else. Even Kevin had gone quiet. That's when my cousin Adam spoke up. He was younger than me by about 4 years. Worked in financial compliance. We'd always gotten along okay, but we didn't really keep in touch. I've heard of Sentinel, Adam said quietly. We almost hired them last year for our fraud detection overhaul. The price tag was pretty steep though, like $500,000 for implementation. He looked at me. Is that accurate? More or less, I said. Depends on the size of the institution and the level of integration they want. Adam nodded, then did some quick mental math. If you're running contracts like that with major banks, you're pulling what? Like $10 million a year in revenue? More than that, I said. But who's counting? Another silence followed. Heavier this time. Because now it wasn't just abstract success. Now there were numbers attached, real numbers, that made it impossible to dismiss. My mom's voice was tight. You could have helped us. We've been struggling. Your father's retirement account took a hit a few years ago. We had to refinance the house. And you were just sitting on all this money. I turned to look at her. Really? That's where we're going with this, I owe you. Your family, she said. Like the word family was a magic spell that erased a decade of cruelty. Right, I repeated. The same family that called me a parasite tonight. Dad stood up, chair scraping loud. You've always had an attitude problem. No, I said, standing up too. I just figured out the rules were rigged, and I stopped playing. This is exactly what I'm talking about, he shot back. Ungrateful. Selfish. Getting lucky, I said. Is that what 7 years of 80-hour weeks is, building something from nothing while you told everyone I'd failed? Cassie stood up too. Okay, everyone just calm down. It's New Year's Eve, can we not do this? But it was too late. Mom turned to me. If you were doing so well, you could have at least sent money. I stared at her. You didn't talk to me for 2 years after I left school. No one said anything. You didn't want a relationship, I continued. You wanted an ATM machine, but only after you found out I had money. Before that, I was just the parasite. I grabbed my coat and headed for the door. Damon, that's not fair, Cassie said. Her voice cracked. I stopped, turned back. You know what's not fair, I said. Spending 12 years being treated like I'm worthless. But sure, I'm the unfair one. Happy New Year. and I walked out. I sat in my car for 20 minutes. Engine running. My phone buzzed constantly. Cassie, Mom, Paul, numbers I didn't recognize. The family phone tree was working overtime. I didn't answer any of them. I drove home in silence. My place in Tempe was quiet. I'd bought it 3 years ago when the company took off. Paid cash. I stood by the window watching fireworks pop off in the distance. My phone kept buzzing. I finally looked at it around 11:30. Cassie, please call me. I didn't know it was like that. I'm so sorry. Mom, you embarrassed your father in front of everyone. Paul, that was intense. You okay? Adam, dude, I had no idea about any of this. If you want to grab a drink, let me know. I didn't respond to any of them. Not yet. I spent the next few weeks in a weird limbo. Work kept me busy. Major contract with a credit union consortium out of Denver. Cassie called 5 times in those first 2 weeks. I didn't pick up. She left voicemails. Long ones. Saying she felt awful. Saying she didn't realize it had been that bad. Saying she wanted to make it right. I believed she meant it. Cassie had always been the good one, the one who tried to keep peace. But meaning it, and actually doing something about it, were different things. Paul texted once asking if I wanted to grab lunch. I said maybe later. Adam texted too, more casual, just checking in, saying if I ever wanted to talk he was around. That one I actually responded to. Said thanks, said I'd keep it in mind. Then this happened. In late January I got a letter. Certified mail. Law office in Phoenix. My parents were selling their house, giving me first right of refusal at a family discount before listing it. I read that letter 3 times, then started laughing. Because of course that's how they'd reach out. Not with an apology. With a real estate transaction. The letter was professional. Market value was around $600,000. They were offering it to me for $520. Act fast. I set the letter down and did what I always do when I need information. I started digging. I spent 3 days building a complete picture. What I found was fascinating. My parents were broke. Not quite bankrupt, but close. Dad's retirement account had been gutted 3 years ago when he invested in some cryptocurrency scheme run by a guy named Alan, some motivational speaker with a podcast who promised 10 times returns in 6 months, had a website with stock photos of Lambos and beaches. That investment tanked. Took about $200,000 with it. Money they couldn't afford to lose. Then they refinanced the house to cover the loss. Took out a new mortgage at a higher interest rate because their credit had taken a hit. Now they were struggling to make payments. The bank had already sent them a pre-foreclosure warning. They had maybe 4 months before things got really ugly. The offer to me wasn't generosity. It was desperation wrapped in legal letterhead. They needed to sell fast and avoid the embarrassment of a foreclosure. And they figured I was stupid enough or guilty enough to bail them out. My dad, who'd called me a parasite, had lost everything on a scam. Meanwhile, I'd actually built something real. You can't make this stuff up? Part of me wanted to ignore it, but another part saw an opportunity. I made a call to a contact at a regional bank, VP of commercial lending. We'd saved his institution about $60 million in losses. He owed me. I asked about a specific property in Scottsdale, my parents' address. He confirmed what I already knew. Pre-foreclosure. Owners in distress. I asked what they'd take. All cash. Quick close. He said $450, maybe $430 if I could close in 3 weeks. I said I'd get back to him. Then I made another call. To my lawyer, had him set up an LLC, clean, anonymous. 1 week later, the LLC made an offer. $440, all cash. Close in 20 days. The bank accepted same day. My parents never knew it was me. They got a letter from the bank saying the property had been sold to a development company. They'd have 30 days to vacate. I didn't evict them. Not immediately. But I also didn't tell them I owned it. I let them sit in that uncertainty. That's when Cassie called again. This time I picked up. Damon, Cassie said. Her voice was tight. Did you buy Mom and Dad's house? Why would you think that? I asked. Because Paul said you have real estate investments, and the timing seems weird. I didn't answer right away. Cassie, I finally said. Do you think I'm obligated to save them? After everything. She let out a long breath. I don't know, she said quietly. Maybe. They're our parents. They're people who treated me like garbage, I said. Who never asked about my life until they found out I had money. I know, she said quietly. I know it's been bad. But they're old. They're scared. They don't know how to handle this. I corrected her. There's a difference between being scared and being entitled. Scared people ask for help. She didn't respond. Tell me, did you buy it? She asked again. Yeah, I said. I bought it. Silence again. What are you going to do? She asked. I don't know yet, I said. I'm figuring it out. That was partially true. I had a plan, but it wasn't fully formed yet, and I wasn't ready to share it with anyone. She sighed. Damon, I get that you're angry, and you have every right to be, but please don't do something you'll regret. There won't be any regrets, I said. That's the one thing I'm sure of. We talked for a few more minutes. She asked about work. I kept it vague. She mentioned that Paul wanted to reach out but wasn't sure if I'd want to hear from him. I said it was fine, that Paul was decent, that none of this was his fault. Before we hung up, she said one more thing. Adam's been asking about you. He wants to help if he can. Help with what? I asked. I don't know, she said, but he seems genuine about it. I thought about that after we hung up Adam, the cousin who'd always been in the background, who worked in financial compliance, who'd casually dropped that detail about Sentinel's contracts being worth serious money. Maybe he saw something the rest of them didn't, or maybe he was just another person trying to get close now that they knew I was worth something. Either way, I texted him, said I was free for drinks if he was still interested. He responded in under 5 minutes. How about this Friday? We met at a diner in downtown Phoenix, nothing fancy. Adam showed up right on time. So, he said after the coffee came, that was quite the New Year's. I laughed. That's one way to put it. He took a sip. I've been thinking about it a lot, about how nobody knew, how we all just assumed you were struggling and nobody bothered to check. It's easier that way, I said. Assumptions don't require effort or accountability. He nodded. Fair, but for what it's worth, I feel like garbage about it. I should have reached out years ago. You and I used to get along okay before everything got toxic. That was true. Before the family dynamics turned into a full contact sport, Adam and I used to hang out at family events. We'd played video games together. I don't blame you, I said. You weren't the one calling me a parasite. No, he agreed. But I also didn't say anything when they did. Fair point. We talked for a while, about work mostly. He told me about his job. I told him about Sentinel, about landing our first client, about the moment 3 years ago when we got the call from the Federal Reserve. That must have felt incredible, Adam said. It did, I admitted, but also terrifying. Did you mess it up? He asked. I smiled. We caught them. Adam shook his head. And your parents still thought you were doing freelance computer work? Yep, he laughed. That's impressive. The level of willful ignorance. We ordered another round. The conversation shifted. He mentioned he'd heard through the family grapevine that my parents' house had sold, that they were freaking out. Did you really buy it? He asked. No judgment, just curious. I did, I said. Through an LLC. He nodded slowly. What's the plan? Honestly, I said, I'm still figuring that out. He leaned back. Can I ask you something? Sure. What do you actually want out of this? Not from them, from yourself. I thought about that nobody had asked me that before. Not even me. I want them to see me, I finally said, as a person who succeeded in spite of them, not because of them. He nodded. That's fair. He finished his coffee. Well, if you need someone in your corner who actually knows what you built, I'm here. Not for the money or the access or whatever, just because I think you deserve at least one person in this family who isn't a complete jerk about it. I looked at him. He seemed genuine. Thanks, I said. I mean it. On the drive home, I thought about what he'd asked, what I actually wanted, and slowly a plan started to form. It took me 3 weeks to set everything up. The paperwork, the filings, the legal structure. My lawyer thought I was crazy, but he did what I asked. I created a foundation, the Brennan Opportunity Fund, mission statement, supporting underserved entrepreneurs who've been told they're not good enough. Focus areas, first-generation college dropouts, people from low-income backgrounds. Anyone who'd taken the unconventional path and been punished for it, I seeded it with $1 million of my own money. Set up a board, hired a part-time director to handle applications and outreach. The plan was simple. The house would be converted into an incubator space. 6 individual offices, shared conference room, kitchen. Everything a startup needed rent would be subsidized. $50 a month, just enough to make sure people valued it. And the first round would be people I'd personally vetted, including Jordan, the kid I'd been helping who'd built a budgeting app. It was perfect. My parents' house, the place where I'd been made to feel worthless, would become a launching pad for people like me. I quietly started the application process and reached out to a few organizations that worked with underserved entrepreneurs. Adam was the first person I told we met up again a few weeks after that first coffee. Same diner, same setup. I laid out the whole plan. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he sat back and smiled. That's brilliant, he said. And a little bit savage. They'll drive past that house for the rest of their lives knowing what it became. Maybe, I admitted. That's not the worst side effect. He took a sip of his coffee. When are you telling them? My mom's 60th birthday is coming up in March, I said. Cassie's planning a dinner. I'm thinking that's the time. Oh man, Adam said. His eyes went wide. That's going to be nuclear. Probably. He leaned forward. Can I be there? Not at the dinner, but after. When things blow up. I want to help run interference if you need it. I looked at him. Why are you doing this really? He set his drink down, looked me right in the eye. Because I'm tired of this family pretending everything's fine when it's rotting from the inside. And because honestly, what you're doing with that foundation is the coolest thing anyone in this family has ever done. I want to be part of it if you'll let me, just because it matters. Okay, I said. You can help. We spent the next hour mapping out how it would go. Adam mentioned he could help with the financial compliance side of the foundation. Make sure everything was airtight legally. Over the next few weeks, he became something I didn't know I needed. An ally. Someone who could look at the situation objectively and call out nonsense when he saw it. We started meeting regularly, not just about the plan, but about work, life, normal stuff. Turned out we had more in common than I'd realized. We both liked hiking, both hated golf, both thought the family's annual holiday card was performative nonsense. In early March, Cassie texted me. Mom's 60th birthday dinner was set. Some upscale place in Scottsdale. Private room. Family only. She really wanted me there. I told her I'd come. She seemed relieved. Said she knew things had been rough, but she hoped we could all move forward. I didn't tell her what moving forward actually meant. The week before the dinner, I met with my lawyer one last time. Made sure all the paperwork was in order. The eviction notice. The foundation documents. The deed transfer showing the house was now owned by the Brennan Opportunity Fund. Everything was ready. Adam texted me the night before. You good? I'm good, I replied. He sent back a thumbs up. Then, this is going to be legendary. Or a disaster, I said. Why not both? He responded. I laughed. He had a point. I showed up to the birthday dinner 10 minutes early. The restaurant was nice. White tablecloths, candlelight, waiters in vests. The kind of place where the check could easily hit $300 per person. Cassie had reserved a private room in the back. Long table set for 14. Gold balloons tied to Mom's chair. Bottles already chilling, I wore dark slacks and a button-down. The envelope was in my jacket pocket. Cassie arrived next. She gave me a hug. I'm glad you came, she said. Wouldn't miss it, I replied. She looked at me like she was trying to read something. You seem different. Calmer. I am, I said. Good, she said. That's good. The rest of the family trickled in over the next 20 minutes. Kevin and his wife, my Aunt Brenda, Uncle Roger, my cousin Nicole, and Adam. He gave me a nod when he walked in. Sat down a few seats away. My parents arrived last. Mom looked good. Smiling like this was the best night of her life. Dad was in a suit. Rare for him. He looked uncomfortable. They worked the room. When Mom got to me, she hesitated, then gave me a quick hug. Thank you for being here, she said. Of course, I replied. Dad just nodded at me. His face said enough. Dinner started. Appetizers came out. Food arrived. Conversation stayed light. I stayed quiet mostly, watching. Halfway through the main course, Uncle Roger clinked his glass time for a toast. Everyone raised their glasses. Roger went first, talked about how Mom was the glue that held the family together, how lucky they all were to have her standard birthday speech stuff. A few other people went, all saying variations of the same thing. Mom was wonderful. Mom was selfless. Mom was the heart of the family. Then it got to me. Everyone looked, waiting. I stood up, glass in hand. Mom, I started, you've definitely been a presence in my life. A few uncomfortable chuckles. I remember a lot of moments growing up. Some good, some less good. But they all shaped who I am today. So in that sense, I guess I should thank you. More silence. This past year has been interesting, I continued. I've learned a lot about myself, about what I value, about what I'm willing to accept and what I'm not. I paused. Let that sit. And I've realized something important. Sometimes the best gift you can give someone isn't what they want. It's what they need. Mom's smile was starting to look strained. Dad's jaw was tight. So tonight I want to give you something, I said. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out an envelope. Set it on the table in front of Mom. What's this? She asked, her voice careful. Open it, I said. She hesitated, then picked it up. Pulled out the papers inside. Started reading. Her face went white. I kept talking. As some of you know, Mom and Dad have been having some financial difficulties. Their house was in pre-foreclosure. They needed to sell quickly. I could see Dad's face going red. Mom's hands started shaking. And they did sell? I continued. About 6 weeks ago. To an LLC. Quick close. All cash. Below market value because they were desperate. Nobody was talking now. Everyone waiting for the punchline they could feel coming. What they didn't know, I said, my voice calm, is that I bought it. I was the LLC. I bought their house from the bank for $440,000, saved them from foreclosure. Mom gasped. And I've spent the last 6 weeks converting it into something useful. I reached into my jacket, pulled out the envelope, set it on the table in front of Mom with a soft tap. It's now owned by the Brennan Opportunity Fund, I said. A foundation I created to support entrepreneurs who've been underestimated, people who took unconventional paths, people who got called failures and were told they'd never amount to anything. I turned to look at Dad. He was standing now, face purple with rage. The house where I grew up being called a parasite and a failure, I said, my voice dead calm, is now going to help other people who've been called the same things. It's going to be an incubator. Everything I didn't have when I needed it most. You can't do this, Dad said. His voice was shaking with fury. You can't just take our house. I didn't take it, I said. I bought it. After you defaulted on payments because you invested your retirement in a cryptocurrency scam. We were going to catch up on payments, Mom said. Her voice was small. You needed $140,000, I said. That's how much you were behind. Plus penalties. Plus interest. You didn't have time. You had maybe 2 months before foreclosure proceedings started. So I did you a favor. Saved you the embarrassment. This is unbelievable, Kevin said, his voice dripping with that fake moral outrage. You're actually proud of this. Kicking your own parents out. I looked at him. The golden child who'd never struggled a day in his life, who'd had every opportunity handed to him on a silver platter. Yeah, Kevin, I said. I am. The room went nuts. Dad was yelling. Mom was crying. Kevin and my aunt were talking over each other. Cassie looked like she wanted to disappear. The only person not reacting was Adam. He just sat there with a smile, like he was watching the season finale of his favorite show. I raised my voice to cut through the noise. You have 2 weeks to vacate. I've already arranged for a moving company to help. I'll cover the costs. And I found you a rental property that's affordable on your actual income. Not the income you pretended to have, your actual income. You're kicking us out, Mom said. I'm helping you move into something you can actually afford, I corrected. Something sustainable. That's more than you did for me. Oh, and one more thing, I said, pulling out my phone. I had the movers scheduled for the 14th, but then I realized that's the day after your book club meeting, Mom. So I moved it to the 15th. Wouldn't want you to miss discussing whatever self-help book you're reading this month. Dead silence. Adam actually snorted. Dad lunged toward me, but Paul grabbed his arm. You're done here, Dad said through gritted teeth. You're not part of this family anymore. I picked up my glass, took a final sip, set it down carefully. I haven't been part of this family for a long time, I said. I looked around the table one last time. The foundation opens in 2 weeks, I said. First batch of entrepreneurs moves in March 15th. Same day you move out. Felt like good symmetry. Then I looked at Cassie. I'm sorry it had to be like this, but I'm not sorry for doing it. She didn't say anything, just stared at the table. I could see tears on her cheeks. I turned to Adam. Let's go. He stood up without hesitation, grabbed his jacket. We walked out together while the room exploded behind us. We ended up at the same diner where we'd met the first time. Adam ordered us both coffee. We sat in silence for a few minutes, just sitting with it. That was intense, Adam finally said. That's one word for it, I replied. He laughed, took a long sip of his coffee. I thought your dad was going to swing at you, like actually throw a punch. He wanted to, I said. Paul's got good reflexes, though. Adam took another sip. So what happens now? Now, I said. I move forward, I've already got 6 applicants lined up. Smart people. Talented people. He nodded slowly. That's really cool, man. Thanks. We sat for a while longer, just processing. My phone buzzed. Multiple texts coming in rapid fire. I glanced at them. Cassie, that was cruel. You didn't have to do it like that. Not at her birthday. Paul, hey man, I get why you did it. But Cassie's really upset. Can you call her when you get a chance? Mom, how could you do this to your own mother? On her birthday, you're heartless. Dad, you're dead to me. Don't ever contact us again. Kevin, congratulations. You just proved you're exactly what Dad always said you were. I stared at that last one for a second. Then I laughed. Adam looked over. What? I showed him Kevin's text. He read it and shook his head. Unbelievable, he muttered. You going to respond? Adam asked. Not tonight, I said. Maybe not ever to some of them. He nodded. We ordered another round. The conversation shifted. He told me about a startup idea he'd been toying with. Something about automating compliance workflows. I told him about the incubator. Said if he ever wanted to pursue it seriously, I could offer him space. He said he'd think about it. Around midnight, we paid the check and headed out. Adam gave me a fist bump in the parking lot. I drove home with the windows down, cold March air rushing in. When I got back to my place, I stood by those floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out at the lights, the same view as New Year's Eve 3 months ago, but it felt completely different now. My phone buzzed again. I almost ignored it, but then saw it was from Jordan, the kid with the budgeting app I'd been mentoring. Jordan. Dude, just got the acceptance email for the incubator space. This is insane. Thank you so much. You have no idea what this means. I smiled. Typed back, you earned it. Don't waste the opportunity. That's what it was about. Not revenge. Not proving a point to people who'd never get it anyway. Just creating opportunities for people who deserved them. Being the person I needed when I was 21 and scared and alone, and being told I'd never amount to anything. The house would open in 2 weeks. 6 entrepreneurs would move in, start building their dreams in the same rooms where mine had almost been destroyed. Coming full circle. The next morning, the foundation director called. Said 3 more applications had come in overnight. I told her to vet them. Send me the top candidates. That evening, my phone rang. Unknown number. Hello. Damon Brennan. Yeah. This is David Whitmore. I run a venture capital firm here in Phoenix. I heard about what you're doing with the Brennan Opportunity Fund. A friend of mine knows one of your applicants. I'd love to chat about potential partnership opportunities. Maybe some seed funding for graduates. I leaned back in my seat. Sure, I said. We talked for 10 minutes. He wanted to provide seed funding for incubator graduates, wanted to sponsor some of the programming, had connections to other VCs who might be interested. I took his information. Said I'd follow up next week. After we hung up, I just sat there for a minute and smiled. This was actually happening. Felt proud. I thought about my dad calling me a parasite, about my mom's immediate demand for money when she found out I was successful, about all those years of feeling like I wasn't enough. And I realized something. I'd never needed their validation. I just needed to stop waiting for permission to be proud of what I'd built. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel and help us bring you more and better stories. Thanks.